Welcome to the Don't You Worry podcast. We're your hosts, Briley and Britton Caldwell, and we're here to say, don't you worry, through stories, encouragement, and joy. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's conversation. What's up, everybody? We're back with episode 5. I'm Britton. And I'm Briley, and this week we have got our very first guest on the podcast. This is our dad, Anthony Caldwell. He's also our pastor and our producer of this show. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be the first guest. I feel so honored.
Yes, it's so special. So do you want to tell us like a random fun fact about yourself before we get started?
Random fun fact. Let's see. Something that a lot of people don't know is that I have been struck by lightning.
Oh.
I've been struck by lightning.
Okay.
So yes, and it affects my life a lot of times. You girls
Constantly.
know.
Yes.
You girls know. So anytime I ever go through a metal detector or airport security or something like that, I get stopped. Every time, there's not an exception. A couple of weeks ago, we were at amusement park. We were at a museum. We were at a couple of different areas, a concert, baseball game, and every time the group had to wait.
Yeah.
Because
it's like, oh, it's Anthony again.
Yes. And so I always get caught going through any type of security. So if you're ever going anywhere with me and we have to go through a checkpoint, be sure and add some time. It affects me every time I fly or wherever I go.
Yeah.
And the worst time, I will say this, the worst time it ever affected me was whenever, because it's not just empty your pockets.
Oh, no. It's like full pat down. Like,
Yeah.
let's make sure he's not got anything on it. Like,
they'll do the wand,
Yeah.
and the wand, they'll still like be beeping and stuff. And so, yeah, they have to pat me down. And the worst part was when I was going over to the Holy Land a few years ago. I was flying out of Rome going into Israel, and it was, it's an international flight. Our group is big, and we're trying to get through the gates, and I get a very intense pat down. It was multiple checks, multiple people. It was a lot of, and they just knew I had something on me. But I think it all goes back to, I believe it was when I was struck by lightning, and therefore I've got some kind of current in my body. So
all right. So that's
exciting.
Yeah, it's very weird. That affects us everywhere we go.
Yeah.
But anyways, back on topic. So you are our first guest today because you were the inspiration of this podcast. You told us, don't you worry, probably a million times. So we want to know, why did you tell us that over and over again?
Yes, I remember telling you all, don't you worry, because you all had a tendency to let worry win a lot of times in your life. Dealt with anxieties. A lot of people do. It's not a rare thing. A lot of people deal with it. And I just know I've lived on one side of worry and I've lived on the other side of worry. And I know that on the other side of worry, there's so much fullness of joy. There's so much goodness that you can find. There's so much enjoyment and just fulfillment that is on that other side. And so whatever I could do, however many times I could say it, I wanted you all to not worry, because it doesn't add anything to your life. And that's why I said it like a broken record.
Yeah.
Maybe one day you'll listen to it. Maybe. I hope. I don't know. We'll see.
Hopefully, maybe since we've got a podcast now, we'll be listening to it
It's
a little
just
bit more.
More reminders of it.
Yeah. It's on the wall. So
Yeah.
yeah. So was there ever a time that you really struggled with worry in your life?
No, not at all.
Okay. Liar. That's so fake. No, but like realistically, if you're not being, fake.
Okay, here's what I'll say. It's not necessarily a fake thing. Here's what I will say. My struggle growing up wasn't necessarily worry. I had some other different things that I struggled with, but worry it's a part of everybody's life, right? There's a reason Jesus talks about it in the Bible, like don't worry, because people worry. That's what people do. And I think that there was a lot of times where I would, any massive change in my life, anything we would deal with as a family, there would be obvious moments of, oh no, are we going to be okay? Are we going to be, are we going to make it through this? Is this something that we're going to go through on the other side and be healthy or be hurt, or how does this work? And so I think that I used to struggle with worry a lot more than I do now. And through different seasons of my life, if you gave me the same situation now that I had, 5 years ago, I'm going to handle it much better now because I understand how to live my life a little bit with less worry overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that specific turning point for when you finally kind of let go of that worry?
Yeah, like when you realized.
I have an actual specific time that I can point back to, and it was January of 2022, which I know you've got an episode out that kind of talks about one of your struggles starting in January of 2022, and that was when my journey of figuring out what God made me to be started. And I think it's interesting how God's put those stories together too, and how I got this freedom whenever you went through a really big battle. And as a dad, it's kind of weird because my daughter's dealing with something hard, but God showed me something amazing and allowed me to get through it in a really great way. But in that month, I went through and figured out, I did a 30-day intensive, spent time trying to figure out how God made me. God made each of us. We're all unique. He doesn't make duplicates. He makes new creations. God is creative. He's not duplicative. And so he's designed each of us and wired each of us a very specific way. And so I went through this 30-day experience and figured out exactly how he wired me, which allowed me to live with more purpose and more of what I'm called to do. And when you're living with purpose, you're not thinking about worry so much, and you're living on purpose, and you're living with a very specific joy that you found because you know how God made you.
So you said that you kind of figured out how God made you. You're unique. So how were you wired? What did you understand from that process?
Yes. So, I'll say this. So I'll tell you my purpose. So my purpose in life, my calling in my life is summed up in a phrase, and the phrase may sound weird, and it took me a long time, so don't make fun of it because I did a lot of research and a lot of time to come up with this phrase. But my phrase is empowering sojourners to live their most purposeful life.
Okay, so
I can tell by your faces already. You're
could you break that down a little bit?
Yeah. So the way that breaks down is I believe that as a sojourner, first off, is someone that is not, that you're in a place that you don't live. And so you're there traveling through, a pilgrim. And I believe that we as Christians, as a believer, my home is heaven. I'm not there yet, right? I'm here on this earth. And so I'm traveling through. So in my travels, I want to live a life of purpose. So my goal is I want to empower sojourners, believers, Christians, to live a life full of purpose and joy. So I want to not just encourage them, I want to empower them. So I want to give them an opportunity to live out their life with 100% purpose to do what God's called them to do. So that's my purpose and calling. And I've even summed it up into 2 words because I don't constantly repeat that phrase over and over again. I'm empowering sojourners to live their most purpose. That's not what I do. I try to sum it up into 2 words. And it really came from studying a lot of the life of Jesus. It's energizing vitality. That's my 2 words. Those are my words that I sense that God's called me to. Anytime people had an encounter with Jesus, they left different. Whether it was they were hungry and they were fed, whether they showed up broken or needing some help, he healed them or he took care of them, or if it was the rich young ruler who showed up to Jesus and then left sad because he wouldn't give something up. Everybody that met Jesus walked away different. My hope in life is that when people have a conversation with me or when people encounter me, they leave different. I want people to walk away from a conversation with me with more energy, and the whole energizing vitality is bringing more life, vitals, the vital things about life, the things that really matter. I want them to walk away with more energy and more purpose every single time they meet me. So whether it's a moment at the grocery store, whether it's a moment in line somewhere, whether it's a moment of a long conversation, a phone conversation, a text message, whatever it is, when people come in contact with me, I want them to walk away from that conversation with more passion, more energy. And I think God has wired me and gifted me that way in a sense that that's my purpose in life. So that's my goal. So when people are going through this life, the thing they need from me is to be energized with more purpose and more vitality. And that has given me a purpose and a sense of the reason I'm here in this world. And if I live in that, then I'm not thinking about worrying about the situations that I'm in because I'm so focused on how to help somebody else on their journey as a sojourner in this world, if that makes some kind of sense.
That makes sense.
How do you kind of keep that a pattern in your life to always think about energizing people?
Yeah, it's just like any other habit. So you take small steps first. So you wake up in the morning and you decide, here's what I'm going to do today. And every encounter, obviously, whenever I started this back in January of 2022, I kind of began this journey. In February, I wouldn't say that every single encounter had that. But I will say today, there's been more encounters every day than there was when I started, just because it's a process. It's learning, it's growing, and part of that growth is taking a risk, right? Because the first time,
Right.
it may be as simple as a smile to somebody too. I'm not coming up with some great, cat poster with some, encouraging statement on it or
like
whatever.
A counseling session.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a counseling session or any of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It's more of what can bring this person a little bit of joy right this second.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a smile? Is it walking up and fist bumping a stranger? That's always super fun.
Yeah.
People, some people think it's weird, right? Some people, okay, dude, I don't know you. But ultimately, most of the time, people are very engaged, and because people want to get energized. They do. And as they're walking around, the more opportunities you take, the more opportunities you will take as you go through life. And so I think it's a growing process, just making every single moment intentional.
Yeah, that makes sense. How would you encourage people our age or like high school age to kind of figure out our purpose? Because like you said that you stopped worrying at this point when you figured out your purpose. So how would you encourage us, since a lot of people our age deal with worry, obviously, how would you encourage us in that topic?
You find your purpose very clearly and how God made you. God wired you and he designed you. Each of us have different fingerprints, right? There's no two people in the world that have the exact same fingerprints. Even identical twins have different fingerprints because God made each of us unique. The way in the process that I found the way God made me was I sat down, and I could take you through the whole 30-day process, but we're not going to do that.
We don't have time for that.
Yeah. What I will say is I ask a couple questions to what things really inspire me. And the two questions I would say that really focus in on is one, what burdens you? What do you get burdened about? And after and you'll do it for a couple minutes, and you'll write down some things that are heavy on your heart or things that you want to see fixed in the world. And you'll write down a few things, but I encourage people to always go a little bit deeper in that. Kind of sit in it for a day or two and think about it. What is it you look around? What bothers you? What's really truly at the root of what's going on in your life? And what I realized in my life that burdened me the most was when people don't feel like they're valuable. I believe everyone has value, everyone. And I think everyone has potential. And I did not realize that was a burden in my life until I sat down and worked through this process of what bothers me. And sometimes, as I'm filling out this list, like traffic bothers me, right? Or, annoying people bother me or whatever it may be. And until I really got down to what is the core issue I have when people feel like they're not valuable, that breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. And so that's one of the questions that I would encourage everybody to ask. What is it that's a burden to you? And then what is it you're truly passionate about? Like, what is it that brings you the most amount of joy? And for me, it was seeing people, and it kind of goes together, right, with like people not feeling like they're valuable, when people experience their value and are living life full. And so how can I merge those two things together? That's my call, right? Because it's something I'm burdened about, something I'm passionate to see. And I've told you girls for years, I really believe there's something about your name. The name you were given at birth, the name you're called. My name means something. And if we break all this down, here's how this all ties back together. What burdens me is when people don't feel like they're valuable. I experienced that through a couple of days in trying to figure out what is it that hurts my heart the most. And then what am I most passionate about? Seeing people find their value in life. My name, the name Anthony, that I've been called for my whole life, means of highest value. So I believe there's something about the way God called you in your name and what your name means. We've talked about what your all's names mean, and we've gone through that as a family, and there's a reason for that, because I believe within your name, you can find your calling. There was thousands of studies done of people that whenever they figured out what their name meant, it almost every single time it matched up to what was on their hearts to burden them to live with purpose.
Yeah.
And I just think there's so much in that God has called you, he's wired you, and he's named you that. And so in that name, there is something about your calling. So how can somebody that is a teenager figure this out? Learn what your name means. Learn it from inside and out, and don't just Google it once and say, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Find ways that you can see it biblically and with, a Christian mentor, somebody that's a leader that you really trust, and then figure out what are you passionate about truly, and not just sports. You know, I can tell you I love sports, and I can even break down what I love about sports and all that. And if you break down what are you truly passionate about and what breaks your heart, you know, and it's not, you know, when we lose a game, you know, that's not, that makes you sad. Okay. But get past that, find what's deeply in you. And it takes a while. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. It took me 30 days and I spent an intensive 30 days. Mm-hmm. But I will say this on the other side of it, that when I live with purpose, worry doesn't win the battle that it's trying to wage in my life. Like worry doesn't win because I'm living with purpose. And if I'm living with purpose, I'm living for something. I'm not living trying to survive something. That's what I would say. If that's something that you could take away, say, listen, find out what your name means, figure out what your passion is, and figure out what breaks your heart. And you will see in that some purpose that you can live with every single day.
Wow, that is really good. So what really stuck out to me was the phrase, worry won't win when you're living with purpose. And I hope that's encouraged some of our viewers today as well. Yes, thank you for being on the podcast with us today.
Absolutely.
Our very first interview, it was so fun, and we hope you'll join us next week for a new conversation.